So LeBron James supposedly played with a broken hand after Game 1 because he punched a whiteboard. Stephen A. Smith, how do you view LeBron after this incident?
Well, the word that comes to my mind is insecure. That's the word that comes to my mind. I don't understand how the greatest player in the world, who's a three-time champion and a four-time league MVP, constantly has this insatiable or arguably addictive appetite to try and control a narrative. The reality is that you got swept. That's number one. Number two, you sit up there and you come out to the press conference with a cast on your hand. Where was it in Game 1? How about Game 2? How about Game 3? But after you've gotten swept, when everybody and their grandmother knows you had virtually nothing to play with, that you were a lone ranger all by yourself against 4 All-Stars and the greatest team, the greatest team in the world right now, and a reigning 2-time defending NBA champions. Now you pick that to come out with is as weak as it gets as far as I'm concerned. You know what? If I were in a better mood and I was in studio, what have you, I would have walked in there with a cast this morning, y'all. I would have walked in there with a cast on my hand.
Stephen A., he said that he didn't wear it because he didn't want to give the Warriors a competitive advantage.
Oh, stop it.
You're not buying it?
First of all, everybody, this was not breaking news. A lot of us had heard what happened after Game 1, okay? So we knew that his hand was hurt, and I'm telling you the Warriors knew that his hand was hurt. Guess how I would know such a thing? Let's move on from there. Number two, again, when you come out there with a cast, you're basically trying to control the narrative because you're trying to give people, another narrative, another headline or whatever that deviates away from you getting swept. And we all know that he didn't have much of a team to play with. We recognize that he's the best in the world. I don't think that it was necessary. Like I said, if we were in Bristol today, Max, I would have came there with a cast on my hand. It would not have been to insult LeBron. It would have been to highlight how LeBron is trying to insult all of us by trying to sit up there and create a narrative for us without leaving it to us to do for ourselves. We know what the hell we saw. We know why we saw it. And for me, it's just another example of what I've consistently said about him over the years. This addictive appetite to try to manipulate and control narratives. We understand that you were outmanned. We understand that you were outnumbered. But in the end, you got swept. They brought out broomsticks. And you couldn't get one game. Not one game. Not one game. Couldn't get one. That's what I'm leaving with. Go ahead, Max.
I find it credible. I find it plausible, at least, that LeBron hurt himself and tried to hide it from the Warriors. Look, you may have known Stephen A., but no one was reporting this at the time. No one reported it throughout the series. So I find it credible that he's like, look, as long as I don't have to, I'm not going to wear it. But then once it's out there, yeah, I got to, wrapped up his hand. It's what it was. Now, does it have the added benefit of pointing out to everyone, guys, I wasn't 100%? Sure. But I don't know that that's primarily about controlling the narrative. This is what I'm left with. Like, how do I view LeBron after that incident? That he's imperfect, that there was a failure of leadership there. And I know he's already responded to my and maybe others saying that. To me and maybe others saying that, because, someone runs to him and says, oh, they said that you failed as a leader. And he's thinking, what more do I have to do? I'm not claiming it's easy. I'm not claiming I could do it. I'm not claiming whoever lived could do it. When you play your heart out, drop 51, 8, and 8, have the game all but won, and forget about the missed free throw, George Hill. The officials overturn a call that they've never overturned before. They never even reviewed a play like that before, given the circumstances, and actually overturn it on the best player in the world on an almost 50-50 type call. And then a teammate is unaware of score and time, and then the coach is unaware, apparently, of timeout. So I understand the impossible frustration when you beat the dominant dynasty of your era against whom you have practically no chance. On the road, Game 1, maybe changing the complexion of the series, and you feel like it's been ripped away from you. I can imagine LeBron had his heart torn out. But that is the test of a leader in that moment. And the way he treated JR in the bench, who went down, sat down next to him, and was ready to take his medicine, like manned up after his mistake, LeBron, obviously overcome with emotion, not putting his arm around J.R. Smith, not picking him up in that moment, and then they got blown out in overtime. I understand that because, Donovan Mitchell was on the show saying, well, that's what we saw. How do we know maybe he didn't do that right before they got into the huddle, right before the overtime? Okay, fine. But then LeBron took that with him into the locker room. still couldn't control himself and vented his frustration in such a way that erased any semblance of a chance. If they had a 0.1% chance to win the series at that moment, he then threw that away. That's also a failure of self-control. I'm not claiming, Stephen A., it's easy, or I could do it, or most people who ever lived could do it. But in LeBron James's position, he is asked to do that, and he failed to do it. And as a result, the infinitesimally small chance that his team had to win went with it. It just means he's imperfect, Stephen A. Tragic Johnson, Magic Johnson, the greatest point guard who ever lived, one of the greatest players who ever lived, lost a series for the Lakers in the finals through mental errors. Babe Ruth, the greatest baseball player of all time, caught stealing second base to end a World Series. Like, you don't do those things, and yet they did them, and they're among the all-time greats, and so is LeBron in spite of this.